I'm going to introduce both of you. So Steve Brown, who's a Sidebar member, introduced me to Chris and Neil a month or two back. So they have a best-selling book, The AI Activation Code, I think. But they're both seasoned CEOs. Chris has helped also hundreds of founders exit their businesses through M&A and other mechanisms. So Josh, when your uh, company gets to that scale, I think that you and Chris can be in touch and he can help you. Neil, you've spent a couple decades in the world of AI before like Gen AI got hot, and and you work with a lot of companies on their AI strategy. I'm gonna just turn it over to both of you to like introduce yourselves. Neil, I know you're gonna primarily drive. You have some slides and content to share with our group. I think we'll be able to take questions throughout, but certainly we'll have room at the end for questions as well. So let's try to make this interactive. And again, I'm encouraging folks who aren't camera shy to be on camera so that we can make this a highly interactive session. But with that, Chris and Neil, do you want to share a little bit more? And then we'll get started.
Well, as I'm sharing my screen here, Chris, I don't know if you want to kick off or say anything.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been an entrepreneur for over 30 years. I've sold two of my own businesses. And so I've had just a lot of, owned several consulting firms, got involved in AI probably around five years ago or so. But just have a lot of experience just in the business, helping increasing enterprise value, preparing to exit, and then helping companies successfully exit. And so AI has really been a magnifier for that type of work that I've been doing, and now really exciting about what we see about the future of AI and what that could be for a business.
Cool. So the one thing I do hate talking about is myself, so I'm gonna keep it very brief. But my journey in AI started with being part of the original IBM Watson team. That was the computer that played Jeopardy against, at the time, the two winningest champions, Ken and Brad. And to everyone's surprise, including ourselves, Watson won. And that is what a lot of people considered the trigger point for the AI wave we're in. So since then, I've worked with a lot of companies, big to small, as well as organizations like the United Nations, figure out how to actually use AI. So it's all about the journey, as we'll share here in a second. Um, I cannot see the chat room while I'm sharing my screen, but Chris is
Yeah.
been very kind to help manage that. So if you have questions, like a burning question along the way, feel free to put it in the chat room. Chris will try and address. I'll ask you a few questions to share some things about yourselves. Chris will drive that. We will save time at the end for a live interactive Q&A as well. So with that, I would ask everybody, if you wouldn't mind, Chris and I would like to try and get to know people as well. If you just toss into the chat, just kind of your name, company role, something like that, would be fantastic. We want this to be more of a conversation than a lecture. I know that could be a little challenging to do online, but I think managing the chat room that way would be great. And we're going to have some fun here. So with that, as you put your information there, we're kind of curious to see how many people are already using AI in their companies and their firms. And if you are, and you're willing to share what you're actually doing. Because in my own journey, I've seen the questions that people ask change over time. So before even the Jeopardy challenge, um, really the question I would get asked is like, why are you creating Skynet? Why are you trying to eradicate humanity? So back in those days, we would actually get death threats about our work, and I think we all know that was not the goal, and we took a lot of safeguards to make sure. But over time, and after the Jeopardy challenge, it kind of morphed into, well, what's AI going to do for us? And there was a lot of hype, a lot of overblown expectations, but there was also a lot of solid, smaller value adds. And so we saw the questions morph into more like, well, what's really AI, right? What's not the hype? What can AI do? What can it not do? And as people started getting more comfortable, kind of started wondering like, okay, well, where should I actually be using AI in my business? And then with the launch of ChatGPT, which brought Gen AI to the masses, because Gen AI has actually been around for over a decade, the big questions are becoming like, is AI going to take my job? Right? And no, it's not. We'll talk a little bit about that. But the question is morphed again, right? Now everyone's trying to figure out the right things to do. But the question we hear a lot from today's people is, why is it that we have not been successful doing anything with AI where my competitors, who are not as smart as we are, have, and they're getting real value from it? So there's a lot to break down here. That's why we call it an AI journey. So let's go to the heart of the problem. You may have seen this study that came out from MIT. It's like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and there has been a lot of hype, second hype, third hype cycle, a lot of investment money put in, a lot of money lost. And the bottom line, this study shows that just AI pilots alone, if we have about full-blown initiatives, 95% of AI pilots fail to realize any value. And that means that can't even call it a zero-sum game because obviously you've invested time, money, and resources. So I mean, only 5% have achieved some value. And why is that? What's going on here? Is this just a giant hype? We have the wrong expectations. So let me tell you a story. I think this is the best way to kind of frame what's going on here. So there was a big mega law firm, one of the largest law firms in the world. I can't name names for confidentiality reasons. And they had actually gone out and hired Accenture to, do a strategy, all these kinds of things. And a lot of my work in the legal space, because it's the second slowest moving industry out there. One of the senior managing partners asked me to come attend this session. And so, Accenture presented these 12 use cases, all these things. And then everyone kind of looked at me. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, you could use AI for some of this stuff. Some of these things you don't really need AI at all. And I can see the Accenture guys trying to, make my head explode by staring me down, right? They were clearly not happy with what I was saying. And effectively, the lead partner just slammed his fist on the table and said, aha, I knew it. It's all a scam. It's all a bunch of hype, just trying to sell me a shiny new gadget, isn't it? No. Look, there's real things that can be done here, right? Things that will create material value, right? But let's figure something out. So I asked, what keeps you awake at night? Effectively, what's your biggest problem? And very bluntly said, talent management. It's easy for them, right? We do what all the mega firms do. Go to the top 20 law schools. We go to the top, look at the top 10% of the class. We interview people. We hire some. We have no idea what they're going to be good at. We don't know if they're going to be a good trial lawyer, a good rainmaker, whatever. We deal with people that we thought were mediocre, got hired by our competitors, that are kicking our butts in court, right? Can AI help us with that? And the answer actually is yes. And so we kind of talked through it on the fly, developed out a strategy and a use case, and they let Accenture do the implementation. It was a few years ago, so Accenture at least forgave us. But we effectively built an AI talent manager for them. And what it did was help assess the actual strengths and weaknesses of people in terms of not just skill set, but communication style, relationship building, complex problem solving, all these things. And so that helped kind of slot people into roles in the firm. And a year after this was rolled out, we went back to kind of benchmark the results. And what we found was that worker productivity had tripled. Morale was way up. People felt like they knew their role in the organization. They felt over 90% of them felt it was a good fit, right? And to this day, that lead partner keeps telling me is like, I never would have believed AI could do something like that, right? It feels like this is kind of a human thing. Only humans could do something like this. That's one of the big challenges that we have. So AI is the third generation of computing. It's got whole new capabilities that many of us are not used to. Still got your hammer and your screwdriver, but that's got this weird widget thing. We don't quite know maybe how we use that. The other thing that's also going on here, a majority of the failure we see from these AI pilots is, look, we're used to computers being about automation, making something faster, cheaper, less errors. The problem is we're also then automating all the flaws. So in our processes, our workflows, all these things, whatever's happening there that doesn't quite work well gets magnified. We're going to do it faster and then at a greater scale. And so we're actually increasing the throughput and accelerating the throughput of our flaws. So you have to start thinking beyond automation. And this is why we talk about kind of the bolt-on AI. Everybody wants to find the right like software package or the right API or the right tool, slam that in. That's not really where you're going to succeed with AI. That's not how you're actually going to capture value. I mean, think about it this way. When email first came out, to the masses about 30 years ago, there were still people that would, print out or they have their EA print out their emails. They would get read to them. They would dictate a response back and then type it in. Why would you keep your old workflow, right? If there's a new way of doing something, and that's what we have to get to with AI, is we gotta have our old workflows. It doesn't mean they're necessarily broken, but we need to move to intelligent organization. This concept we call business consciousness, where really AI is no longer just a tool, it's a partner, it's an employee. It can help us react to things and assess in real time so we can become more adaptive. And that's really where the push of future of work is going towards. It's not about specialized types of jobs and do I have to become a machine learning programmer or a roboticist. It's all about how we're going to work together with AI, called this hybrid intelligence. So yeah, AI is better than us at math and looking lots of data, but there are things that humans are much better than AI at, like creative thinking, handling first of a kind situations. And so hybrid intelligence is human using machine, not human versus machine. We want to take our own, strong capabilities and augment those with AI abilities. So
Neil,
yeah,
let me just comment on something. So back on that stat, we were looking at 95% of why AI initiatives fail. One of the big reasons is ineffective integration into the actual business process that it's designed to make the difference on. And that largely that fails in the pre-planning several reasons in the pre-planning process, but also then in the human traction process. So it's actually, if any of you guys have ever looked at integrate, like when a company goes to acquire another business, there's a stat by Harvard that says 80%, 70 to 80% of integrations fail when you go to acquire another company. And it's the same reasons, a lack of integration. And that comes down from a lack of planning and then a lack of that human traction with the thing that's being done. So very similar reasons why AI initiatives fail and why acquiring other businesses and integrations fail. And then on this particular slide, in terms of risk, right? These little bolt-on things, you might get a 1% or 2% improvement in whatever in productivity or efficiency from a little bolt-on thing. That's not where real transformation occurs, right? So it's less risky, little bolt-on, like, oh, hey, let me add this little Chrome add-on to do whatever, make my Excel things more efficient using AI, right? But when we look at how do we really create transformation, how do we really move the needle inside of a business with AI, it comes from a deeper integration, a deep process, and then eventually, which Neil will get into in a moment, the total organizational transformation. Those are more risky because it's impacting more things and there's a lot more reasons why it could fail, but it's also greater rewards.
all right, thanks for adding that in, Chris. So I love this quote by Harari, right? The electric light did not come from the continuous improvement of candles. And for better or worse, that's what we're really wired for, is continuous improvement, right? We're looking at where our pain points, where our problems are, and how do we do these, minor fixes and improvements to get more value. There's nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with using AI for this, but you plateau very quickly. And we'll show this why in the journey in a second here. Right? What you really want to start thinking is moving away from just automation and thinking about more innovation and adaptation. If you think about it, the goal here is still the same. Candle produces light, so does like a light bulb. It's just different ways of doing that. And so we reach a point where we have to think about just trying to go beyond automating our processes, especially because of those flaws, and think about, is there a better way of actually doing the work? And here's the power of AI. It's the one tool we can ask how to use it to do things better. And so that's what we really want to stream into. So this is kind of the fork in the road that we have from, we're all kind of looking at this bolt-on AI with chatbots and running scripts and looking at automation to what we really call conscious AI, where it's a living, breathing entity within our organization. So, it helps us be adaptive, it helps us understand the strategic things in real time. So we can not just be more agile, but we can leverage more powerful data-driven decision making. And so this is where we see a lot of businesses get stuck. So this is, the part of shifting from how we go from automation to that kind of adaptation. And to give you an example of this, or maybe make this crystal clear, this is the number one reason why most companies fail to actually get any value from AI. Because we think AI is software. That's what we're all used to. Software is just a pre-programmed set of instructions. All it does is following a fixed path, that could branch out in a couple of different ways, but it can never leave any of those branches. AI doesn't actually work that way. Real AI actually is not programmed, it's taught, right? So you have to think of AI as a high energy intern. It's ready to do whatever kind of menial, grunt work, tedious type of stuff you want it to, but you have to teach it first. And you have to teach it your processes, your workflows, your data, your business model, just like you would a human intern. That's the way you want it to go, and it's going to grow, and it's going to get better very quickly. It's go into an employee to a partner to help you achieve this level of what we call business consciousness.
Yeah,
So,
Neil, let me interject something here. And this is a similar story, and this is an analogy we use in our book, The AI Activation Code, about AI going from a intern to this potentially the CEO or partner in the business. And about 4 companies ago for me that I was running, I had actually brought on an intern. And they worked for free for about 6 months. And I was like, man, this guy is awesome. But I was investing. I saw how good he was. But then I would invest a lot of time into him. I was like, hey, I'm gonna put time into you. I'm gonna get to know you. I'm gonna develop you, right? So there was a relationship that was being built with that intern. And then over time, I was like, wow, this guy's so valuable. Let me start paying him, right? And then he moved up into the head, overseeing our entire coaching department. And then eventually I wanted to step away from the business, and this guy was able to step into the CEO role and actually run the entire business. Now, there's 2 key dynamics here that are very similar. It was about 2-year period. 2 dynamics here that are very similar to what can happen with AI. One, as Neil was saying, thinking about it as that intern that you can nurture, invest into, cultivate, and develop, that then become a strategic partner or run certain aspects of your business, in some cases, even the entire business. But the other thing is, the underlying thing is your relationship. What's your relationship with AI? Your relationship with AI has so much to do how there's an individual relationship with AI, and then there's a company relationship with AI. And that relationship, building it, understanding it, really understanding each other, will ultimately determine how successful you are with any implementation, right? So that's kind of that's that human dynamic, that relationship that really impacts outcomes in all of this that we're talking about today.
oh, great. No, great. Thanks for sharing that example, Chris. And you can see the shift from kind of conventional to consciousness. And we see, and we've helped some organizations, don't think of it as a massive enterprise thing just happened overnight. Again, it's a journey. We're always starting to see some of this like in things like customer service, where now we have AI, partners that they're not just helping to kind of, prompt questions or prompt scripts for the customer service reps, they're actually observing the call, you know, and they're giving feedback in real time to the human service rep. They might be pulling up other information. They're also looking at things like they're analyzing the tone of voice and the word choice of the customer. See, like, hey, this customer is really going from frustration to anger now. We got to employ some of these techniques to kind of help calm them down, feel like they're being heard. And these AI partners also give feedback like a manager does. You got General Electric that now runs their manufacturing plants with an AI foreman. The AI actually assigns work to both humans and machines and evaluates their performance. And so this whole move towards business consciousness, it has started. It happens, obviously over time and a little piecemeal, but this is where the future is taking us. And by future, I don't mean 10, 15 years out. I mean 3 to 5 years. So this is the big challenge we see from a lot of organizations, right? What should I be doing? How do I avoid these fail points? What are the right use cases? And we get asked a lot, like for our industry, what are the top 5 AI use cases? And they're like, well, we're not doing 4 of them. So those are the 4 things we should be doing. Yeah, absolutely. The problem is if you're always playing catch up, you'll actually never leapfrog ahead. Because while you're trying to implement those 4 use cases you're not doing, the other people are now already working on the next top 5 use cases for 2028. So you have to think about again in your journey. How you're not just going to keep playing catch up. How are you going to come and overtake? And so to achieve this level with AI and achieve what we call business consciousness, there are really 4 stages. A lot of organizations today, stage 1, which is awareness. I think for the most part, most people realize and accept AI is reshaping business, right? The curiosity, the experimentation, knowing some of these things, got it, right? We're seeing a little bit more, obviously, into adoption, where they're starting to use AI tools. They're thinking about automating some of the processes, implementing chatbots or maybe even AI agents, right? But it's very piecemeal. There's no broader vision here. It's like kind of a plug and play. Minimal value comes from that. I'm not saying zero, but minimal value. But this is where a lot of companies are trying to now transcend into the 3rd stage, which is actually adaptation. How do I actually embed an AI strategy into my operations, into my business? How do I turn AI from a tool into an intern, to an employee, into a partner, right? How do I start looking for things that are better ways of just doing things, even if it's not broken, right? We look at the email, right? Leeches actually worked back in the day fairly well for medicine. We don't do that anymore because there's a better way of treating people. And that's where we got to start thinking about is what's the better way of doing some of those things. To finally stage 4, which is autonomy, the AI partner that's actually you helping to provide insight and helping provide recommendations on where to actually take the business. And so it's this partnership of hybrid intelligence. You don't skip from awareness to autonomy. It is a journey, and everyone's in different parts of their journey. We've seen larger companies, departments are in different stages of this journey as well. And these are things that we have to understand because we have to be able to define that future state, that future vision, whether it's 1 year from now or 5 years from now. Then we have to figure out where are we today, what's going to be the optimal path to achieve that future state. So think about this for a second. Kind of be honest. If you're willing to share, I encourage you to toss it out in the chat room where you think you might be on your AI journey. Awareness, adoption, adaptation, or autonomy. So to kind of give you
let me just add in a little flavor on the business consciousness. That's this idea of business consciousness is where your business comes to life, where you're able to talk with it, interact with it, just like you would another human being. So imagine all of your different technology systems, databases, plugged into like a neural backbone, and then with an AI mind on top. And that's what enables these conversations to happen. And then imagine your business sitting around the board meeting, or you're having a regular meeting with your company, with your other leaders, and there is your business, right? Maybe it's on a computer screen, maybe it's embodied in a robotic form, but you're able to talk and interact with it. And it's the smartest entity at that table. That is where we see all of this is leading of how businesses, you'll be able to interact with your business in the very near future. The other component of this is where you begin to then empower your business to be autonomous, to make changes and decisions on its own. It sees a new competitor launching a product, and it maybe changes your existing value proposition or your marketing materials to address potential competition. Or maybe it's enabled to launch a new product. But getting to that place of where your business is conscious and it can operate at that level is that journey. And it takes time, step by step, to get there.
Great, thanks, Chris. So I want to save time for questions, so I'm going to speed things up a bit. Apologize. If going too fast, always just ask a question. But just a couple things to share with you, kind of as people or organizations are moving through this AI journey. You look at a company like Stitch Fix, which does clothing, where they recognize that one size doesn't fit all, so to speak. They sell these style consulting and style boxes. You just can't put people into mass buckets or micro segmentation anymore. If you can know people like a best friend does, you could really tailor each box that's going to maximize the value the customer gets from your service. And that's what they're actually doing. While we as humans can't know all of our customers like a best friend, AI actually can. We've actually created AI tools that know psychology, that know neurolinguistics, all these things that reveal hidden traits, personality insights, as well as hobbies, interests, these types of things. As a result, this very hyper personalization from Stitch Fix, they've achieved 25% growth. You look at Zara, again, I know they're a clothing manufacturer, but they're actually using AI in their supply chain. So they and their partners are actually looking at things, and they're looking at not just like real-time inventory and sales, but they have AI studying and analyzing social media on their prospective customers and see what people are wearing, what they're saying, what they don't like. And the AI is proposing real-time adjustments within their supply chain for demand forecasting, things to make, not make, new products to consider. And that's really reduced a lot of waste and holding inventory within the Zara supply chain. Then you have Lemonade with the insurance company. They're using AI for loan underwriting, for processing claims. No surprise there. But one of the things they're doing, and the Department of the Treasury is actually taking note of this, is they're using AI for fraud detection. So are people submitting a fraudulent claim? Is this a fraudulent document? In some cases, they're able to determine within seconds that this is actually a fraudulent claim and deny it. And it's cut out, again, a lot of waste, a lot of fraud in the system. And that's just one of many. I mean, we've helped a lot of clients. HBO's got a lot of content. If you ever gone to HBO Max, for example, and wondering what to watch, again, using some of this personalization, these neurolinguistics, psychographic profiling, you can do better matchmaking for each person because you know them like a best friend. It's gotten to the point where now even the studios are asking us, can this help us drive what content to create? Like what kind of TV show, what kind of movie, what kind of plot, what kind of actors to use? Well, the answer is yes. So tons and tons of case studies we could share with you. Just ask us. We're happy to do that. But this is really the march that we're going down to is where are we going? Where are we on our AI journey? The march toward business consciousness. So we've worked with hundreds of companies. We've been interviewed in a lot of major media outlets because everyone's just asking, what will AI do for us? It's not going to take our jobs. What's it going to do for us? And what's the future of work going to be? Where's the future of my company? How do I maximize value here? So for all of you as business leaders, you got to get ready for that strategic mindset change here. I know we think about efficiency, but the ship is sailing towards adaptability. So it's not about fixed scope anymore. It's about how do I adapt to very fast changing times. We're going from do I have the answer to am I even asking the right questions? Can I ask better questions here? And from AI as a tool or a project to really AI being a partner within my business. So with that, this is our approach to help organizations actually achieve business consciousness. So phased approach, again, it depends where you are in your journey, but we've been able to get people to real see meaningful value add from AI and start this journey within 3 months, depending on where they are. So please do feel free to ask us for more details. If you're curious, let us know. Or if you haven't read our book, please do check it out to see the framework. But we have a tried and true program that's actually helped a lot of enterprises out there start their journey towards business consciousness. So please feel free to scan the QR code to get more information about the book, about the framework. And if you're ready to, activate your AI potential, please let Chris and I know. We're here to help you. If you're wondering where you're even at, we do have an assessment on the website. Just scan the QR code or go to aiactivationcode.com and you can spend 10 minutes to understand where you are in your journey. That I promised time for questions, and I do want to honor that. So
let me actually, can you put that slide back up, Neil? I just want to comment on the real value of this business consciousness assessment and just hit on these points, right? So there's, we covered a large amount of territory here, and we can help you figure out exactly where you're at and what it's the low-hanging fruit and actually what's happening in your industry through taking that business consciousness assessment online. We actually had a few people on this webinar that have already taken it and have already gotten it. It's a comprehensive report that really is just like very mind-opening onto like what's actually happening in your business, where you're at, what's next, and kind of just displaying that landscape. And it's complimentary. It's on the website. You can scan the QR code or aiactivationcode.com. And you'll get this comprehensive report. You'll also have the option, if you want to set up a time to talk with Neil and I, we can do that about your actual report. And then Neil mentioned we already had the book. We were actually, Neil really undersells himself. Neil is an amazing, amazing guy. I feel lucky to have partnered with him. Neil's the AI ambassador for the UN. We had our book here hosted at the UN's AI for Good Summit back in July. So you can also pick that up there. And yeah, you can also just drop us a note on our website if you're interested in just having a conversation or just asking us some questions. We want to see you guys successful, right? Like AI can make a massive difference for you in your business. And a lot of people just have their toes in the water and they're afraid to go deep, right? And so it's helpful to have a guide. It's helpful to have somebody take your hand and say, hey, let's go deep. Let's go, let's go dive, let's dive. So yeah, happy to answer any questions for you guys.
Yeah, if you have any questions, I don't have to raise your hand. We're happy to call on you. If you want to put them in the chat room.
Yeah, we're not a shy group, so I like people going off of mute and asking. So give it a few seconds here. And especially for some of oh, hi, Steve. Great to see you back here. But for some of the folks who kind of, shared in the beginning, if you could have perfect information about your business, what would you want to know? Were any of these frameworks helpful in terms of getting you closer to how you might want to drive AI within your companies to get to those answers?
One thing we've talked about, like one of the standard vanilla LLM use cases with RAG is like here, if you could have, and I know Morgan Stanley already went out a couple years ago and published that they did this, where they set up like a knowledge base within the company with all of their facts so that employees could go and query it, right? We were talking about something similar But a lot, when I think about the fragments of information spread across, I think the first one that always comes to my mind is email. So how do you give AI access to your email without having it know what I ate for dinner and what I really thought of that guy I met, and all the other things that it should not be in there, without it being kind of manually curated and compiled?
So the honest truth is, if you're using your email and you're sharing that information, like we had for dinner, there's no way to have the AI essentially not read that. It may not use it. You can teach it that's not valuable information or discard it, right? That goes to the training. And that's the big challenge a lot of people have is you have to teach the machine. Remember, high energy intern. And so a lot of people discount the training or they think it's already got things out of the box. So if you're using Microsoft Copilot, for example, it's already integrated to Office. So Copilot actually does read your emails.
Oh,
So if you're wondering about that, and yes, I do use it. I love it. It helps summarize very long emails for me. So hopefully focus on what emails need to be tackled first. But this is the other thing. Like if if you're used to using like your work email for other things, well, one, you have to, change again, people process technology, you got to change some of your process and change some of your people behaviors. If you don't want AI to know what you had for dinner, then don't use your work email. The other thing is on the
well,
training
but
side,
there is stuff separately that is work related that's sensitive. So I'm talking to a client. I certainly don't want my AI chatbot that I want to answer questions the way I would like to answer it to include any private conversation I had with the client. Right. So the dinners and the personal stuff was kind of meant more tongue in cheek. But
yeah,
this,
and
not all of it, like, it's the curation problem. It's like, what do you actually want inclusive? How do you train based on this large, disorganized pile of data?
well, that's the challenge a lot of organizations have is you have to use something we call ground truth, sorry, which are rules on how to make decisions. So you have to give the AI rules on how to make decisions, not the decisions themselves. So if something is marked confidential or confidential appears like in the body of the email, then don't read it, don't store it, don't do anything like that, right? Don't share, period. If it's something to do that clearly is like dinner or they're talking about the football game, again, you just skip over it, discard it. But you start thinking about how many of those variations you have, right? That's where the challenge comes in. The more variation, the more training data you actually need to teach the AI.
Well, I know for my own like executive assistant, like we have code on my emails around like prioritization or different things like that. So you could probably mark like emails as sort of confidential or whatever, and then train the AI that if it says confidential, just ignore whatever the opening and closing chunks are. Um, Something like that. Is that
And there's again, this is a good example of you have to change other things. People, process, technology, one thing changes, the other two things also change. There's a company that what they've done is into their email system now they have check boxes. So they can mark it as confidential, they can mark it as non-work related, or priority, or even one that says contains action items. So the AI can actually filter. So if it sees something that marks as confidential, it skips it, doesn't read it. If it says non-work related, it skips it. So there are things you can do to facilitate this process. Right? You got to remember that AI it doesn't know everything. There's not like one chat GPT out there. There's a billion versions of it. And so whatever you're doing with your models, your data, other people usually can't use. That's why you're seeing a lot of organizations move from LLMs, large language models, to SLMs, small language models, where you can create a very small universe of information for the AI. The most common use we see right now is what we call the HR concierge. You create a SLM, you give it the AI agent your employee handbook, things about benefits, these types of things. Instead of asking a HR rep or going to an HR portal, you can ask things about PTO, or you can ask things about tuition reimbursement, and it knows that. But if you ask it like, how do I book a conference room? It just shrugs, says, I don't know how to do that.
Any other questions?
I have one.
Yeah, Amy, go ahead.
So I'm in finance and we have, you know, very high level of confidentiality issues, as well as the AI can't call something negative positive. And, you know, so what are your solutions for that? Or do you have any?
This goes back to the hybrid intelligence, right? This is not about AI just replacing machines. It's about people using machines. And so to give you an example of this, last year, the Mortgage Brokers Association, asked to give a talk about AI and things, and shared some things are going on, and there was a lot of talk about liability and what if the AI makes a mistake, and the question was, well, don't people make mistakes? And they're like, well, yeah, but that's different. So there are safeguards here, but the goal is the person using AI is more accurate than just the person or just the AI by itself. And so this goes into, there are things we can do with the AI and the process and the training, but you're not removing the human from the loop, which is what a lot of people keep thinking about with automation. So fast forward a year later, that's back to the same big meeting with all these lending banks, and they're like, yeah, we got that. We got value from that, right? We realized that we just can't buy a box that can magically do everything that we want. Just like we teach our employees some of the things around risk management, we have to do the same thing with our AI systems.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think part of the issue is that when you lose track of too much of the process, and then, you know, let's say 10, 15 years go by. So I'm wondering how this is going to scale, I guess. I have some meta questions about the whole thing. Because, you know, if you usually in finance, the way you learn is by understanding the details, and then you can understand the bigger picture. But if you remove the piece where you're understanding the details, I'm not sure if you would catch anything in the bigger picture that doesn't look right. And then also, somebody, the presenter had mentioned, well, you know, humans are still going to be needed for the decision-making process, but that's actually not the case based on what you described. You know, most of the decision-making process is going to be done by the AI. So I'm wondering how to build a system that is both useful, but at the same time, you know, basically doesn't negate itself by just operating the whole business by itself, or maybe that's the goal. I don't know.
Yeah, I just want to be very clear, and Chris may disagree with me, is we're not taking the human out of the loop, right? There might be some small transactional things like, hey, I see a cyber attack, it's a domain attack server, let me take some safeguard actions and make the decision to do that. But we're not advocating, especially at a high level with strategic decisions, that is all done by AI. I don't know if anyone's ever read Yuval Harari's book, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, but he actually advocates for an AI prime minister or AI president, but only in day-to-day operations, right? For other things like policy making and some of these other things, it's you still need a human to do that. And it's the human using the AI, not that way. And I get everyone's always wondering about the long term. I mean, we it's hard to say, but there are actually Monte Carlo simulation models using synthetic data. They're actually kind of modeling out some of these potential impacts or lack of impacts. And I can share this because this was just completed with the HUD, but the HUD actually did a 3-year study on something like this with mortgage loans. And one of the things they actually found out was they didn't see any major issues, but they actually found out when it came to doing like the underwriting, the calculations on, and recommendation to approve or deny and say an interest rate, they found the AI was actually less biased. That they found like people of color in particular would be approved more often and usually at a lower rate. They were trying to figure out, we're looking at figure out why that happened. What we realized was even if you blind out the name, the human loan officer was still making inferences based on the person's job, the neighborhood they currently live into, or the neighborhood they're moving to, that affected that. And as a result, probably by early 2026, the HUD will actually mandate that loan calculations will need to be done by AI. So, Chris, I know you want to jump in and
Yeah.
say something.
Yeah, so I have a different take. I think that the founders, the leaders, even departmental managers, if they develop trust, right? It comes back to that relationship. Can we trust the output that the AI is giving, right? Once you can start having higher levels of trust with the output, then you can say, well, hey, now I can let it make that decision, right? So it's just like when you have an employee coming into your business, even like with the intern analogy, right? Trust has to be built. And then as more trust is built, you start giving them more and more and more responsibilities. And so I think this will come down to an organizational decision, right? On what is their relationship going to be with AI. I think at the end of the day, most organizations are going to come down, what's the most practical thing? What moves the mission ahead? What makes us the most profit, right? I think most organizations will kind of land there, which, as I believe AI will evolve, will mean AI taking over more and more decisions. And I think there'll be a whole new conversation around that balance of human and AI. And I think it'll be largely dependent on the type of work that's being done. What do the people want, right? Like, there might be a whole new movement. We want human-run businesses, right? Like, people make up all kinds of stuff. But I think that we will see more and more decisions taking over. I believe eventually we'll have an organization that's an AI run, where the CEO is the AI, right? That'll make news. And but here's the interesting thing from a meta perspective is we're seeing AI getting integrated into organizations, and even as I'm doing my own work, I'm noticing things, right? Because humans make mistakes, right? Like, and AI makes mistakes, right? And there was just that article that came out about ChatGPT or OpenAI discovered why it was hallucinating. Oh, we put pressure on the AI to give an answer. I was like, of course, like that's like the most obvious reason why it would want to hallucinate, right? So they're going to I believe they'll solve this hallucination thing at some time, which then the answers will become more reliable. And then as humans, as we're working with AI, and we can't keep like going back to the details, right? I thought that was such a great question that you asked. It's a real thing that's happening now. We're going to have to trust AI. If we're not in those details and we're giving that up, then we got to be trusting AI in terms of what those decisions can be. And then we're like, well, if there's mistakes, right, then, do I want to, at this point, is kind of where I see a lot of people are at, do I want to be able to do more and potentially have mistakes made with AI? Or do I want to do less and like really make sure I'm understanding everything, but you still have the chance of making mistakes? So for this, I don't have an answer, but it's definitely an interesting thing to look at, because then there's the productivity, right? Well, maybe I can put more output, but I might, let's just say, hey, maybe I'll make 5 or 10% more mistakes, right? But I get more done, right? Is that worth the cost versus still needing to get into the details, relying on AI, but making sure I'm going to have a higher QA? But I think eventually we'll be able to trust AI more, and then that will be less of a concern.
Okay, brilliant. I'm just going to throw up this QR code before people need to hop off for their next meetings. Please, 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 do take out your phones and point it to the QR code. And thank you, Josh. I see you taking out your phone, so you know the drill. Please share feedback. It takes literally less than 2 minutes, and we share the feedback with Chris and Neil, and I know that they would greatly appreciate it. So go ahead and do that now. And then I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions before we'll end. But thank you, Chris and Neil, for your time. It was brilliant, and really appreciate you being here with us. So, okay, other questions. Steph, you came up on video. Sarah, you came on video.
Yeah. Thanks. Nice to see you. Yeah, I'm curious, you mentioned that this isn't about kind of plugging in these different agents and kind of piecemeal solutions, but I'm not clear on what your kind of integrated solution is. Is it having all of these different agents talk together? Is it connecting with businesses that have a larger solution? Like, what does that look like in a snapshot of a minute.
I'll give you a typical MBA answer. It depends, right? You
Okay.
got to step away from thinking about these things as just like tools and stuff as to employees.
Mhm.
So we're actually working with a nonprofit right now that are building a family of agents, and each of these agents do one specific type of task. One agent can invoke other agents. The way we talk about integration is they're actually embedding these things. They're treating these agents as like employees of the nonprofit. And that's what we're really talking about, is how we make that more short
Okay.
consciousness and integrate that way.
Got it. So if you think of them that way, it's sort of like these different roles, and then they can communicate together as a team. And that's where sort of this,
Yeah, and the agents communicate not just with each other, but also the human employees.
yep. Cool. Okay.
And
That's
I'll give you
helpful.
another
Thank you.
answer to your question there. When we begin to look at like what's the end goal of what we want for the business, and our vision is business consciousness. So when an owner's like, yes, or a founder or management team's like, yes, we want to have a conscious business or as much as possible, that changes what we're doing right now, right? And so maybe you're doing a bolt-on or a chat bot or whatever, right? But when you look at like, how do we actually get there, right? Then typically we start off like, well, what's the low hanging fruit right now? What's an AI project that we can do that gets traction? But let's do that project in a way that's within the long-term vision of what we're wanting to build. So typically that comes down to how is that going to eventually connect to other data systems? How are we structuring that data? Who's going to be using it? How will that play into the larger thing? So the big difference, if I'm understanding your question correctly, it's the end in mind that creates the contextual difference in the roadmap to how we do an individual project right now, and also many times what actual project that we do right now.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you all. This is great. I have one question. So I've done implementations of internal chatbots and even agents in the enterprise level. How do you view building agents with enterprise tools with like your ERP systems, with your HCM systems? Are you all seeing a lot of use cases with those big, large systems that have tons of workflows? And kind of what is the downside if you've worked in that type of space?
So yes, seen a lot of that. That's really the new movement, is towards that kind of agents, especially with ERP systems. The downside or the downfall, or why they're not getting value, is they think one or maybe two agents can do this huge set of work. Agents are very effective when they do one task or one activity, and that's it, right? And so you see some of the companies now going like, well, I need 20 agents now to do this. That's too many agents, right? But you got to think about like employees. If you have people, interns, people, entry level people, how many do you need to do some of the same set of work, right? That's the way you should really look at it. So remember, agents are very effective with one task or one activity. That's it.
Okay, I think that's a time. I know, Chris, did you already drop some resources into the chat yet for folks to follow up if they have additional questions? And then I know you have that amazing resource that you wanted to share out. But share it in the chat. I'll also put it into the team sidebar message thread. But thank you everyone for coming, and thank you, Chris and Neil, and for Steve for introducing us and bringing them on to Sidebar. It was really, really helpful, and uh, a great guide as we start thinking about transforming our own companies. So thank you for being here, and I'll share out these resources following the call.
Great.
Well, thanks everybody.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Tom.
your time.
Thank you.